to the first episode of Podsploitation. And already you're saying, what is Podsploitation? And who are you? Well, I can answer those in reverse order. My name is Daria, and with me are...
I'm November.
And I'm Callum.
And as for what we're doing, we're going to be taking a look in each episode at some of the examples of the cinematic genre known as Ozploitation. Ozploitation, it's a bit of a fuzzy meaning, this term. Occasionally there is the old Ozploitation is what I point to when I'm saying Ozploitation definition.
Yeah, according to Wikipedia, Ozploitation is every movie made in Australia between 1974 and, last year, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I can accept that the genre went on and had some tributes or holdovers, but it very much has... Yeah, don't listen to Wikipedia's, in short.
It's got it generally right. So it appears that Australia got its R rating in 1991, and that kind of opened the floodgates for the idea that Australia could be a place where people could make film. 1971, even. That one. The one that was 20 years earlier.
Because this film itself is 1984.
Good point. And so it was the idea that Australia could become a good place to make movies. Had opened up the ability to make any movie you wanted to, including slashers and monster movies and kind of softcore porn films, and also that Australia itself could be a legitimate reason to make a movie just because Australia.
That whole unique Australian identity. What we would do is also recommend, and here we're already recommending stuff, checking out a documentary, and it regularly pops up on the likes of SBS On Demand, but you can find it in various DVD and streaming services called Not Quite Hollywood. And that's probably what popularised the expression Ozploitation.
Which apparently was maybe sort of founded by Quentin Tarantino, who was a massive fan of like the Grindhouse films and all of that kind of sort of semi-genre anyway. But he called it Ozploitation, I think, in the film. And then the producers actually, according to Wiki at least, they then shortened it to... the director shortened it to Ozploitation. So,
well, to go with Blaxploitation and the various other versions thereof.
Yeah. And it's kind of similar to Blaxploitation in that way, because, I mean, one of the main reasons that the Blaxploitation was a genre is that it's just, black culture is so weird and strange, therefore any movie we make that experiences that, it's a legitimate reason to just have an entire movie. And
in fact, there are a few Australian, or Ozploitation, I should say, films which do follow the other thing that kept happening in Blaxploitation, which was this is the black version of this other movie.
Yeah, very much so. So this is the Australian version of Jaws. Apparently.
Nature horror.
Yeah.
It's a lovely old genre when some big critter just turns up and wants to kill people.
It's pretty cool. It's terrible. It's such a bad... No, it's not. It's not a bad movie.
You just had an entire debate right with yourself there.
I did.
Did you want us to leave the room?
No, that's fine. That would be weird and strange. But yeah, it's certainly... I was going to say it's not going to win too many awards. It wins 3.
It won awards.
It won awards. It's an award-winning Australian movie. Wow. Sorry, that just sunk in as I said it.
The film we're talking about is Razorback. And basically, in a nutshell, Outback, big pig killing people in the Outback.
Yes. And as I think one person referred to it, what was it you said? One person referred to it as Jaws with Trotters.
Yeah, Jaws with Trotters, which is also named the documentary on the DVD. So if you want to seek out the DVD to watch along with us, then pop along to your local DVD source, your local brick and mortar or online store.
Do they even still have old school video? There are still occasional video stores. And
I think we've got at least 2 in this city.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Concerning. That's actually genuinely a little depressing.
Well, I used to actually go to the one near mine quite regularly. Then they just jacked up their prices very quickly, very suddenly. And
forgot that the internet existed?
Well, yeah, this is the thing, because I do like the idea of just wandering around the video store, and because that's something you can't do the same way with the streaming service or with iTunes or what have you. But...
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a video store that jacked up their prices right when they were going out of fashion. It's clearly an establishment run by the mob. They don't want customers.
Well, they soon didn't have any, this one, and
that was their point all along.
They sold up.
The trick is to come in at the end when they actually start selling them by the weight.
Oh, yes.
I genuinely have...
Yeah, I got a few cheap ones there.
Yeah, I've genuinely bought some DVDs where it was
Just
like,
buy them by the box.
please buy 10 of them, and we'll give you there'll be
video
less.
store.
And yeah,
Yeah, I think I got what was then the entire run of Saw for like $5 or $10 or something.
crazy. But yeah, so
Do you still have them?
Yeah.
nice.
Do you still have a VCR?
Oh no, these are on DVD.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I do still have a VCR, but these are on DVD.
Oh, you do still have a VCR. Well, if I do find if it turns out, because there's a bit of a discussion as to whether or not I may actually own a VHS copy of this movie. If we do, we might have to sit down and watch it and see whether it's even remotely the same as the digital re-release that's come out just a little while ago. So yeah, but no. So Ozploitation. There are things which definitely are Ozploitation, and there are things which probably aren't. If you go to the Wikipedia page, you'll see that every Mad Max movie, including the latest one, is Ozploitation, which doesn't make any sense since the latest one wasn't even made in Australia, predominantly. No, they wanted to actually film.
We had too much rain in the desert and they couldn't make it there.
Yeah, so they had to go to Argentina,
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
There's
so
too much rain in a desert, even
I
a
know.
sentence.
Yes.
Right, what the hell, man?
Yet they, the desert turned green in places and wasn't useful.
Yeah, they were going to go back out to where it was all filmed originally, and nope. So yeah, Australia, changing climate. We're just going green and wet.
Yeah, so even as we go along in this series, you might find the occasional movie where you're saying, is that really Ozploitation? Should they be covering it? And, well, the answer is if we're covering it, we're covering it.
Yeah, and maybe make
Because
suggestions.
we possibly don't know.
This is true.
Yeah.
Well, there's also a budgetary element to what is Ozploitation, which is why I would say the latest Mad Max can't be it.
No.
It wasn't made in Australia, but that had a hell of a budget.
Which was one of the things about Razorback, is it was actually a heck of a larger budget than we thought it was.
Yes, after watching it, yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
So
Razorback.
have a listen to the trailer and then have a listen to our review of Razorback. Razorback from 1984, directed by Russell Mulcahy, starring Gregory Harrison and Bill Kerr.
Out here is where it will find you. She was the last one to see it.
She's missing. It's an accident.
Now, he must face it
Thought you might know what happened to her.
alone. God has created it, and hell has given it a name. Now, there's a new breed of terror. Razorback.
Well, I can remember that the VHS video cover used to be red and black. It was like red shading down to black on the...
Do you still have it? Because you've got a box or two of VHS in your garage.
I may actually have the original VHS. Right? We'll have to check after this to see whether or not I have it. Because, as I was saying to you, I was amazed at how good it looked in digital format.
I must admit that I didn't get the aspect ratio right.
And I sent the aspect
You
ratio
did
to
send
you.
it.
It's like widescreen. It's
Yeah, actually,
Panavision.
I kind of noticed that when we were watching. At first, I wondered, before anything identifiable turned up on the screen, I thought, oh, maybe I screwed this up when I was converting it to watch because it's so wide.
It's really wide. It's nearly 2.5 to 1. The correct ratio, I had to push, because I watched it digitally, I had to push VLC to 223 to 1, I think it was. Well, I said 221, and then there was some little part of it that looked even worse. And I thought, 235 to 1.
And then at first I wondered, did I do something weird to the colour too? Because it opens and it's so very orange.
It's all the orange. In fact, there was a thing I saw a couple of years ago about certain posters. They're using orange and blue really, really commonly as a kind of a breakdown instead of red and green or something. Lots of Star Trek posters and things, if you look at that. And I'm like, this is that same colour palette. This is like really bright oranges and
Well, have
really
either of you
bright
been to Broken
blues.
Hill?
Oh,
I don't
once
think so.
many years ago. Before I got my coloured eyes fitted.
Well, I haven't been there, but then you go to places like Broome or Kakadu or whatever, and the dirt is that colour.
Oh yeah, but it's matched up. It's matched off against the blue sky. So you got the red dirt and then the blue sky. But there wasn't much blue sky in this movie.
There was not much blue sky.
This movie was all about the mist and the fog. They must have spent a fortune in fog machines.
Or it just was the Australian Outback and they just got blown all over the place.
Well, this is true. I mean, we're in the middle of a bloody windstorm at the moment. It's just crazy. But yeah, I was really surprised at how good it looked on a big screen at that ratio.
Yeah.
Because the thing was that when I first started watching it, being a child of the 80s, I was used to always having the early part of the movie squooshed. Because that was the way they fit the credits on the screen. So if you watch a VHS version of any film, the opening sequence is always quite long and tall.
I'll have to get you a VHS because it's out of the garage.
I remember it really, funnily enough, and it'll probably come up again, I remember it really with Jaws. The opening sequences of Jaws, they were very, very squooshed so they could get the credits.
Yeah, I remember. I don't think I saw Jaws that way. I think by the time I saw Jaws, they were letting themselves letterbox on regular television more. But I do remember that happened. It used to be, in fact, there used to be a bit of a thing that if it was a less well-known or popular movie, that they'd do more likely to do the squishing thing.
Oh, okay.
If it was the big Saturday night movie or whatever their movie of the week was, they'd do something to tweak it.
Was it Gremlins? Was that the first movie I think I saw that said, as requested by the creators of this movie, we are broadcasting it in the original aspect ratio. This will probably create a letterbox effect on your screen. There was a particular movie I remember from the 80s where they turned.
Well, we watch
and they
Gremlins every
warned you.
Christmas, though, so...
Well, yeah, but we see it in the widescreen release for DVD version.
Oh, of course.
But I'm pretty sure if you go to the original VHS release of Gremlins, there's actually a warning at the start that says this movie will be letterboxed, because that's the original aspect, or something. I don't know whether they used aspect ratio. But, yeah. So that part was surprising how good it looked for a really... Well, I want to say low budget, but I did some research on that.
Ah, yes.
Any idea, roughly, guesstimates on how much they might have spent? Remember, this was, 1984 in Australia.
Is this Australian or American money?
Australian money for the spend. I could only get American money for the box office.
Oh, I want to know what the box office was.
Oh, the box office was a lot less than they spent. Even with exchange rates.
$2 million?
Ooh.
$3.50 and a half a chicken.
They didn't have the half a chicken. It was $5.5 million Australian for that movie.
Ooh, that's
a lot of smoke
In
machines.
1984. That's insane. I don't know whether or not Crocodile Dundee...
I mean, this is back when Australian movies were sort of... They weren't even... Well, actually, no, that's not true. They weren't as anticipated to hit the world stage.
Yeah.
They were definitely trying, because this is why you get random Americans in these films.
Yes. Oh, God. Or Australians playing Americans, which... Is it Judy Morris, the actress, who plays the...
Best,
the reporter? Yeah. I should remember her name because she's like a stalwart of Australian... I mean, most of the Aussie guys are hitkers in one way or another. Hey, it's that guy / girls in one way or another. But yeah, it grossed $150,000 US.
Oh, dear.
Oh my God, you couldn't even buy a one-bedroom flat with that.
No. So I don't know if they had loss leaders back then, but yeah, for $5.5 million outlaid, it was...
And this is the guy who'll next year get to make Highlander.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Russell Mulcahy. I was blown away by his resume. So he did a whole bunch of music videos, both before and afterwards and things. And then went on to make Highlander and one of the Resident Evils and did some stuff. But that's not unusual for Aussie films. I've seen, you see an Australian person for an Aussie film, and then you see they go to Hollywood and they suddenly start making huge things, of which I can't think of any examples.
Mind you, it's also hard to rate now, but I think Highlander was not even kind of anticipated to be as big as it became.
That wouldn't surprise me.
No, because it's shite.
It's
So yeah, I completely agree.
Oh my God. I can't believe we're having you on a movie podcast to say comments like that.
First Blood Drawn.
Highlander's an amazing movie. Yes, it's an hour and 20
If there's an
minutes.
empty channel next month.
It's an hour and a half Queen music video clip, this is true, but it's amazing. You don't like it at all, do you?
No, I don't. I've watched it. I've tried
That's okay.
I watched bits of it, and then you convinced me that it's really, really good. And I tried, but no.
That's me in Spinal Tap.
I get that. Yeah.
I can see that. I think Spinal Tap, it's like one of those things, especially when it comes to comedy, it's one of those things that it's very much of its time.
But I learned an amazing thing about it yesterday.
Spinal Tap?
Spinal Tap. Mm-hmm. So some of the deathly curses were based on the drummer's deaths in Spinal Tap in Harry Potter.
Seriously?
Yes.
Oh my god, that's awesome! That is so cool. Damn, I'm going to have to check that out. That's really brilliant. Police
That's the police coming to take you away from that Highlander.
That's what you get for banging out Highlander, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't... Because when I was watching the opening credits, I mean, to see $5.5 million dropped on something like this, because first off, it's a monster movie.
Yeah.
And...
I'd expect $5.5 million to be dropped on it now.
Yeah, because $5.5 million is nothing. $5.5 million is... What was it? Blair Witch Project. They came in at a ridiculously small amount of money, and that was still in the millions, wasn't it? That was still
was that 1 million?
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong on that, though.
Yeah, but back then people still occasionally made movies for less than 1 million.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I saw that this was supposedly one of the first actual monster movies, one of the first Australian monster movies, of which I can't think of very many others, unless you want to call Wolf Creek a monster movie, but... Yeah, so apparently it was the first.
I think there are a few coming up which are Attack of the Vicious Monster.
Insert line here.
Yeah, Australian wildlife often. In fact, this is probably a bit remarkable in that it's a pig basically, and not a wallaby or a koala or something. That would be kind
or
of pitiful.
wobbly, as she says.
Yes,
in the broadcast.
And then laughs in that. She's a good actor, and I know that she can do it well, but yeah, some of the line delivery on this is not great.
I thought that was her point, though, because she's doing it when she's doing it to camera.
Oh, yeah, no, but I mean the cheesy catching herself afterwards. That whole, I said wobbly, and it's like,
right.
Cringe. Which is, I think, that was actually something that we may have to do, it occurred to me, if we're going to continue this podcast, is to do the Aussie animal bingo. Because I noted an emu, a kangaroo, and then a wombat fast asleep on the deck.
How does a wombat even get on the chair was my first thought. But you're forgetting the camel that someone was riding and they had a cassette player on the side of the camel.
Oh, yes, the
so they could
boombox.
listen. Yeah, so they could listen to music.
Because there were about 3 or 4 songs that were like proper songs at this stage, weren't there? I noted, considering that
Ivor Davies did the soundtrack.
Ivor Davies?
Icehouse.
Mr. Icehouse.
See, there we go. Okay, there we go. I now lose a point to you because I don't know Icehouse.
That's just bloody Australian.
Apparently so.
They were, for want of a better word, they were pretty big in the 80s.
What, wombats or Icehouse?
Icehouse.
No, Icehouse.
Wombats are roughly the same size unless you go back a few tens of thousands of years.
Then they've got the big teeth and they're scary and stuff.
That's Razorback.
Of course.
Yeah. We heard the title.
So what did you think from the first one? Because I figured you must have seen this before. So you watched it with like a modern sensibility.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen Australian films and films of this era before, so I wasn't completely lost. But yeah, I also saw a nice transfer digital copy. I was actually surprised too how good some of it has cleaned up. When our later hero, when our token real American is...
There are like 3 heroes in this. I didn't know who to root for.
When he's, being chucked in the middle of nowhere and is trying to walk back to civilization.
That dream sequence was amazing. That absolutely blew my mind. And working on the principle that we're not going to just make this an IMDb trivia thing, supposedly, after they released the film, Steven Spielberg rang Russell Mulcahy to ask him how he got some of the shots that we used in the dream sequence. Yeah, like that one where he's walking almost a Dali bit with the big crack down the side. That was...
Yes, the whole hallucination, I've had no water for... There is seriously no track of time in this film.
There really isn't.
I cannot tell how long it took for events to unfold.
In fact, the only thing I noticed was the one bit of actual here is an event and then here is a time frame was completely arbitrary, which is the 2 years later sequence after the child has died.
Yeah.
It's like, why 2 years? And I didn't get why that was so... Yeah, I was waiting for it to be like a significant thing. I guess it's just giving him 2 years to get into character as hunter.
Yeah, the bitter man fighting a war against a porcine population.
And can I just say, he's doing a bad job because there's a lot of wild pigs around
There
if there's a
really
man
are
who
there.
hunts. Although he actually does say he only hunts razorbacks. Didn't he?
That's true. He does.
And let's face it, we pretty much know he's looking for the Razorback.
Yes, his white stroke black hairy whale of the land.
This is every second episode of a TV show where the heroes go out to the middle of nowhere and there's some legendary fish that can't be caught or some deer that can't be hunted. Only it's mostly this guy that's as obsessed with it, but it seems the locals are ready to tool up at a moment's notice as well.
Oh, some of the stuff that happened with the locals was insane. You were talking about the camel. Do you remember the bit?
Everything about that movie was Australian blokes are terrifying. I would never come to this country had I seen that overseas.
Well, I mean, they got the classic Ozploitation film, which is the 70s movie. The one where the guy totally loses his money in a tiny town while trying to get to his girlfriend.
Not Sunday Too Far Away.
No,
it's with the kangaroo shooting scene, and work played it a million times, and
I can't remember, but oh god, that's terrible because it's one we should definitely watch.
Really bug me.
But basically, it's one of those dystopian man finds himself in a really terrible situation, and the entirety of the terrible situation is just Australia. All it is just stuff that happens in Australia. People getting pissed on a Friday night, the RSL club doing its silence
at 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. And I know that there are probably people, if they're listening, screaming at their computers right now because I can't remember. I even sure I wrote it down, but I guess I didn't. I can't remember. Anyway, yes, it's an amazing movie, and
I haven't seen it because of the kangaroo scene.
Yeah, the kangaroo scene.
And I know I'm going to have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
The kangaroo scene is in fair.
Wake in Fright.
Wake in Fright.
There we go.
Right. Okay.
There we go.
I've heard of it, but not seen it.
Wake in Fright is a really good film, but it is all about how terrifying Australia is. Do you ever hear about They're a Weird Mob? Do you remember that?
Have you not watched it?
I've read it, and I've seen bits.
So Wake in Fright is basically They're a Weird Mob, only they're so weird, they're fucking terrifying. And it's all about just Australian blokes are terrifying. That culture of that time.
Well, in this film, you very much get the idea that New York, where our brief American bits are, is civilized, and Australia is just this series of shacks.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know where they would have landed, but we never see an Australian city. You don't see even... I mean, he jokes about not having a taxi in the town at one point. Apparently somebody drove a taxi all the way out there because they were lost.
Yeah. Well, it was pre-GPS, but you'd have to be pretty damn lost. I imagine there's one road in, which is the same road out.
Yes. Yeah.
Not a lot else going on around there.
Excuse me. You tell me who runs this place?
Yeah, me.
Great. I'd like to reserve a room for the night if I could.
Well, I'll give you a bed out the back.
Whereabouts can I find Jake Cullen?
Old Jake? Well, nowadays he's out about 10 Chain Road. 35 miles down this road here, turn left at the junction. Follow the road right through to the end.
How about a taxi or a car for hire?
Taxi? Haven't seen a taxi around here since about 1953, and he was lost. Listen, you better take my old bomb. Just top up the tank when you get back.
You sure?
Sure. I'll look after your bag, don't worry.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Listen, I'd watch the steering. She gets a bit wobbly over the tongue.
Okay. Back soon.
To the left!
Do you notice the Razorback only exists at plot points? Like, there's no background discussion, found someone, or mauled by a pig, or someone disappeared. There's none of that.
Oh, yeah. As in, where did it come from? Well, I guess...
Well, what does it do during the rest of the week?
Well,
Or 2 years.
So let's address the elephant in the room, or the great white shark in the room. And a lot of people said this was just Jaws in Australia.
Well, I believe one of the extras on one of the Blu-rays or DVDs is in fact called Jaws on Trotters.
Oh, that's really cool, because they'd actually dropped 3 Jaws movies before this one. So Jaws, Jaws 2, and the one in 3D all dropped before Razorback came out.
Right.
Which was funny because I saw certain beats and things. But going back to what you said about the plot point, in the original Jaws, there's no real story. Jaws just turns up. And funnily enough, that opening sequence in the original Jaws is where the shark takes the woman, whereas, of course, in Razorback, the Razorback takes the baby.
Yeah, which is
And
quite
burns the
interesting
house down.
It's 4 years after Azaria Chamberlain.
That was what I was going to... Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up. I'd completely blanked on the fact that this was just after the Chamberlain.
Well, yeah, because there's people saying, how could a pig take a baby? And all these people never believed that a dingo could take a baby. Whereas, of course,
it is.
Now they...
Yes. Although, as far as I know, dingoes aren't flammable. That was the thing that blew me away. You said that before. The pig that sets fire to the building on the way through.
And it seems to have some strange electrical charge toward the end as well.
Oh, when in the lightning storm, when there's just bizarre flashes. Well,
yes, but there's not a lightning storm, is the problem.
No.
That must be how that guy's TV stays powered after Razor drags it off.
Hilarious.
That was a long game. Were you ordering that as well?
You said the guy did music videos. I can totally picture that scene in a music video.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
The wall falls away and then the band is suddenly there for real or stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't actually think about the
How did
television
it
staying
not
on.
bug you from the moment you saw it? It's not even the length of the cord. It's like you clearly have no electricity supply by now.
Yeah, maybe it's Electric Pig keeping the maybe that was what he wanted. He just needed TV. He was missing his Don Lane. Oh god. How much must they have spent to actually get sick?
Oh, maybe that was an extra couple of million.
Yeah, this guy watching Don Lane and drinking Foster just so he knows he's in Australia.
Yeah, and then getting up and his pants are halfway down his arse. We did not need to see that.
Oh, that's an obligatory thing. If they're going to bend over, you've got to have the plumber's crack or the Aussie crack or whatever the hell they're going to call it for these ones. But yeah, that was so... It's not like you're going to forget you're in Australia.
No.
Although that said, when I watch some of these things, I peg really obvious Aussie accents. Real Australian, Crocodile Dundee type accents.
Yeah.
I didn't peg very much of that in this. I don't...
Well, half of them just spoke like bloody idiots. Especially the two brothers. Especially the... especially crazy one.
Oh, well, that's David Argue. He's like a hero of mine. So David Argue... No, not from this. He's not my hero from this. No, because David Argue is the guy who did Hercules Returns. He's the bloke who actually owns...
He's the guy who runs the cinema.
Yeah.
Oh, I like him now.
And, well, that was the thing,
No,
because...
he's not a rapist.
It was really funny, because I saw, there was that whole... Ugh.
Actually, that was very much a thing which sticks around to this day is we need something bad to happen to a female character. Rape, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the go-to.
So...
It's also what I realised how codified a signal it'd be that if you're filming the guy from on the ground and he's starting under his belt, whatever, this is movie shorthand for rape's about to happen.
Yeah.
Or attempt to happen in this case. I think he actually gets just into the regular violence and gets called away.
Yeah, he gets called away by the pig.
Yeah, a pig comes along.
We're meant to think is suddenly a good thing for a second. And I was wondering about this because I remember with Jurassic Park, the Tyrannosaur goes from being the main bad to by the end of the film being the good, heroic creature that saves the day because it kills them from the raptors that are the really, really bad. And there was so many changes of tone in this from, okay, Bill Kerr is just a man trying to live his life, and then he's shown as being this crazy pig hunter dude, but then he becomes the hero again, and then you got these other bad people. But then you've got the pig who comes in, which is meant to be the big bad, but the pig sort of saves the girl, and I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Well, no, it kills the girl as well.
But
Like,
that's
it
exactly
eats her
right.
afterwards. It's not really... It saves her from being raped. That's a good thing, but then to be devoured by an animal...
Yeah.
is not awesome.
It isn't, no?
Apparently. She screams a bit, so I assume it's not a good thing.
Probably right.
And apparently consumes her whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, eventually we find out that the ring gets found. It's like, oh, clothes, they must be delicious.
Bang on the 1 hour mark, can I just say?
Was it now?
Almost exactly 1 hour into the movie is the moment that Bill delivers the ring to the husband. So
Nice.
the husband. Now, were they married?
Yes, it was their 1 year anniversary.
So he gave her another ring for their 1 year anniversary.
It was possibly an...
I suppose the 80s we're talking
Eternity
about
ring?
here.
Because she was pregnant.
Yeah.
I think there's usually an eternity ring. Well, I thought it was after the first pregnancy, or after the first baby, but it could just be...
Yeah.
Or, chicks like jewellery.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, I just saw it as that. It's anniversary, here's a present.
Yeah.
Shiny thing.
And actually, watching that with a modern sensibility, there was a little tone deaf as well. When she comes back and she's really upset, and she sits down and she's feeling blue, and the husband says, "What's wrong?" And she goes, "Prenatal depression," and then they have a laugh. It's like, really? This is how you're going to process that? Was prenatal depression not a thing, and it was just a joke?
I thought it was just a joke, because she was 6 weeks pregnant.
Yeah, no, but that's the point, is, he asks her what's wrong, and she says, oh, maybe it's prenatal depression, and they go, ha ha ha. It's like, or maybe she's genuinely telling you that she's feeling pretty depressed at the moment and you should be taking care of her. But I guess...
And she's just been abused on television.
Have a hard time taking care of someone in a naked, hairy-chested apron.
It was quite
burning
fabulous.
Spaghetti. Did I say that my dad had one of those for ages?
Oh my god, we did not need to know that.
Oh, it was an 80s thing. It was there with the wooden spoons. And the Tom Servo delivery of the jelly beans, too. I don't know whether you saw
I
that.
have no idea what you're talking about.
There's a little jelly bean dispenser on the countertop that's the same candy dispenser that they made Tom Servo's head out of for MST3K.
I didn't catch that. I did catch the E.T. Nightlight on the Doomed Babies
I
side
missed
table.
the E.T. Nightlight. Oh. I did see the terrifying fucking bunny rabbit that it has. Did you see the face on that? Jeebus. You just send a child to bed with that. It's as tall as it is, and it's got this horrifying grin rictus. It's ugh. Yeah, so I don't know. So they brought the pig in, and then Bill Kerr becomes Screamy Man. How many times does he just randomly scream up into the heavens in this movie? I counted 4 separate incidents. Razor! Well, because there was the bit where he basically kind of screams off into the thing as the Razorback logo comes in and slam crash focuses on there, which is such a horror movie trope. And then there's another sequence where he misses the boar at one point. He just screams his frustration to the heavens. And then he wakes up after they've done his legs.
Which does seem fairly scream-worthy.
Oh, no, yeah, completely legitimate. I mean, that's an earned scream in that one. And then, there was some other one as well when he was wading through the mud or something. Anyway. He was Screamy Man. Bill Kerr was definitely Screamy Man for me.
Speaking of the horror movie cliches, even though it was an Outback Australian pub, it was very much every Hammer horror film where they go to the inn and, the locals, people from around here, we don't like people from around here.
And...
Well, they were only really horrible to the American woman, because they hung around and joked with the cameraman. The husband didn't really meet anyone except for the owner of the pub, who, did you notice he never ever got his car back?
Yeah, or any of his stuff, or...
Yeah.
Well, actually, wasn't there a point towards the end when they did the big ride out that was almost like the Man from Snowy River? Did you get that vibe when everybody kind of tears off and, as you were saying, the big kind of, all they needed was pitchforks and...
Oh, it reminded me of Keystone Cops, actually.
Oh, and then at the end there's I think it was the pub owner catching a ride on the camel.
Yeah, saying, follow my car. So, at some point...
Oh, I see.
Someone must have delivered the car back to him at some point.
But do you reckon he's only got one car? He said take the old banger or whatever.
Maybe, yeah. Oh, you reckon he's got like 3... He's the billionaire of he's the magnate.
No, I think everyone's got a bushbasher.
True.
Yeah, they've got like their real car and this one that's been sitting in the garage for 10 years or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Still technically goes, but they're not really game to lean anything on it.
Just an engine with 4 wheels and the door
honest,
that has that creak.
Most of our houses have had this, so...
This is true. I have driven a VB Commodore for many years with bits that fell off. It's just, they're bulletproof. Although, I did get the very strong Mad Max vibe from that...
Oh, that vehicle. That was awesome.
Kangaroo hunting truck. But I have to say, there's one thing, I don't know whether you picked it at the very end where they're doing the big, getting all the villagers together, okay, let's go for it. And can I just say, they give up hella fast.
Don't they?
Yeah, one time and she's led them to the wrong spot. Oh, well, that's it. It's obviously not real. Let's all go back and get pissed. Someone rides a horse out of the pub. Someone was inside the pub on a horse. I had to stop and go back and just make sure. There's right at the bit where they all scatter. I can show you this. Right at the bit where they all scatter and everybody leaves, a horse rides out of the front door of the pub.
Oh my god, I'm going to have to check that scene again. That's fantastic.
Seriously?
Though in the US, a nightclub just got shut down because they had someone ride a horse into it. Horses aren't really happy with the nightclub experience. It kind of freaked out a bit.
Right.
Maybe the pub was more laid back for it.
That
horse is probably mare or something.
Was somebody on its back?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's the problem then. You're not allowed to open carry in a nightclub.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
What? No.
Okay, maybe not that one. We can cut that one. So, God, yeah, what else was I going to say? Because there was bits and pieces about that.
The car at the start, well, not at the start, but when Beth is in town, she's doing her piece to camera, and the guy's, what's his name?
Bill Kerr. I can't remember his actual name. Screamy Man.
Jake.
Turns up.
Jake?
Yeah.
Cool.
There's a tube in the back of the truck that's got 2 or 3 machetes just loose
Yeah.
sitting there. It's like, you go over a bit, that you're just going to be losing. How many machetes were there at the beginning?
Actually, that's a really good point, because I noticed that about half a dozen times people would... There was a point when the costumer obviously decided to reenact the Wild West. Do you remember
I
the bit
love
where...
the costume. They had fun.
They did have... The sequence with... I mean, David Argie's outfit's just...
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic.
Amazing.
It's like clothing, I can just gaffer tape my arm.
Yeah, but the bit where the main hero, the guy who actually lives to the end, is like wearing the leather vest. He's basically walked out of a Wild West film. Everybody was
And pink
carrying
pants.
on their sides. Was it pink pants he had on?
I think, they were pretty pink.
Oh,
at the
wow. I'll
end.
have to check that out. But they all carried knives like sidearms. So where you would normally in a movie see pistols, because it's an American film, nobody had pistols. I don't recall
seeing any handguns.
No, I only
There were
remember
a lot of rifles and shotguns.
Yeah, but they were all just knives. So there you go. That's not a knife. These were knives. But yeah, you're right. There was this big poster tube of like various machines for the hacking of pigs. And the other thing that I noticed that, and given the fact that this is obviously a cinematographer type movie, the reflections, bright light reflections on faces and things, like mirror light, not sort of light box stuff, which gives you a nice wash. There are about 5 or 6 points where there were, like, we've left the car parked in the Australian sun and here's a bright flash of light on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wonder if it's verisimilitude, or if they just went, shit, we left the car out in the brightest days.
Yeah, maybe the first one, and then they did that whole thing of looking through and, that looks really good, let's just keep doing that again.
She'll be right, mate.
But yeah, because that's one of the things that's actually kind of difficult to get, because that sets up what they call high dynamic range. So as soon as you get a really bright light, all the dark gets even darker, and you have to kind of really tweak your cameras for it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that makes it quite tricky to film in direct sunlight, because you end up just silhouetting everyone.
And especially back then when you couldn't fiddle stuff as easily.
No.
Yeah. So for them to have actually done that, if they did it accidentally, you can imagine them swearing for hours afterwards in post-editing. But yeah, it looked like they did it a couple of times on purpose, so yeah, weird.
Well, it certainly added to the look. It's just so freaking sunny and hot and bright and everything out here.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking at it all the time thinking it looks like this baking hot desert, but everyone was wearing layers and jackets and jumpers and scarves, and so that really surprised me every shot. Maybe it's just because I was sitting downstairs in the middle of what seems to still be like summer.
It is definitely summer.
But I thought they were very overdressed during the day. But then sorry, I just realised all these good old Aussie blokes, and they're covered up completely because they're in the sun all day. Do you know there's no industry in this town?
Oh yeah, no, I was wondering. There's the pub. But
there's the illegal pet shop place.
Yeah.
Or pet food place.
This kind of killed me. So this was something, you see it in Wake and Fright as well. So Wake and Fright very much has commentary about killing kangaroos.
Yes.
And in Australia at the time, there's no two ways about it. They were a genuine pest. There were hundreds of thousands of them. There's footage of them eating farms out. Now, whether you agree with the idea of culling kangaroos or not, and I know that's just recently come up again, it was absolutely an industry of the time to take kangaroos and turn them into pet food. That's nothing unusual for Australians.
No.
So I thought, well, obviously this is where they're very much aiming it at the American market. We'll make her fighting the good fight to keep the kangaroos going. And then supposedly a pet play, which, if it is illegal, calling itself, Pet Pack? Was that not subtle? And then having this big multi-tiered factory
and
on a hill.
Everybody knows it's
I think
there.
it must have been real. Like a totally legitimate industry. I didn't get illegal at all.
But look at the quality. Look how feral it is. Everything's half broken. If you don't hit this with a shovel, it's going to explode. They're sluicing out blood. This is not an above-board operation.
You don't think they've done the proper safety checks and OHS
I think there could be some OHS issues.
Probably.
And cleanliness.
Probably supposed to say that supposedly legitimate pet food companies are
subcontracting.
And just not asking where this raw material they're getting is coming from.
Oh, they get baggies of something called Pet Pack out of a bag that's stamped with a cobra or something, and out of the back of a ute. And it's just like, excellent, there's the bulk for the meat. That's all we need to worry about.
Yeah, just sprinkle some beef tallow on it and the dogs and cats will eat it and they'll never know.
Yeah. Although I must admit I did like the way she went straight from the live kangaroo to pet shit. It's not becoming pet food in your bowls. It's like, here are kangaroos that'll become, what did you say, dog dirt? No. Oh,
excrement?
Excrement?
Excrement,
She used some...
Yeah.
On the sidewalk in New York. And
New York. And it's like, wow, that's, yeah. All right.
I think you skipped a step there.
She's like an early version of people who post on social media but don't actually... They know the end point of their cause, but nothing in between.
She's a hacktivist from back in the day.
But I also noticed that factory, that plant, whatever, almost all the Terminator movies, there is a plant which appears to have no discernible function other than to fight Terminators in.
Yes.
And I think this is the same, except it's for fighting super pigs in.
Well, you're suggesting that two giant spinning opposite direction fans in the middle of the floor isn't going to be standard facilities in a pet food place? It's just there to kill a giant wild boar?
Also lots of nice ladders and gantries and pipes to grab onto.
And chain!
Chain. There's always chain, isn't there?
There's always chain, and it has to be designed to jangle next. I mean, even Aliens, for goodness sake. There was the sequence...
Die Hard.
There you go. And Twister.
Yeah.
Remember the sequence where they walk in, and although at least they kind of sort of put a nod to that by saying, who the hell are these people? But there's always dangling chain. I don't think I've ever seen a dangling chain in real life.
So the guys will go out roo hunting, and they come back with the truck, all the roos strung up. They're already skinned.
Ah.
Why would you do that?
Well, this is the other thing. They also say,
Some of their clothes.
That's true, he does wear a kangaroo coat.
We won't kill it straight away because we want the meat still to be fresh at the...
Yes, of course, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, but it makes even less sense if they've killed it on the way back anyway.
Exactly.
I don't think the extra couple of minutes between it lying on the ground and it dying in the truck are going to make a huge difference.
No.
And given the fact that they're going to send it through 17 minces and a curtain of hanging chains, is the tenderness of the meat really the major issue for their end product?
And what did they do with the skin? Why you skin it out? It just made zero sense.
Why is the one thing they care about the actual taste quality of the meat?
That's very true. They don't seem to care about a lot, do
Well,
they?
they do end up wearing about half of it. I remember from the sequences in the actual butcher where they're supposedly doing the actual butchery stuff as opposed to the...
God knows what the hell else they were doing.
They were doing. And anyway, yeah, we'll get back onto how that random, like, mystery masked butcher person just spontaneously dies at some point. But yeah, whatever it was they were doing, it's like they're pretty much covered in filth and grossness, and yet still have brightly coloured clothing and soft jumpers and cashmere sweaters and whatever the hell else David Arkie wears at some point.
Seems to be just the two of them working that place too.
Well, there's a third guy there really briefly.
Yeah, there's a third guy. There's a third guy that's wrapped in plastic, wrapped in stuff. Yeah, he's like this nameless, faceless. What's? I know there's protagonists and antagonists. What's an agonist for someone that does nothing whatsoever? An agonist?
Does that have an ist?
Maybe
It might just be character.
They're basically just not there at all. But yeah, they are in the film. They do appear. I'm sure there's a real person
they don't have a
there.
speaking role.
No, and then they're dead. Then there's just a spontaneous moment where the guy pans across when our hero goes into
when
the
you have
factory.
literally outlived your usefulness.
Yes. Yes.
I love at the start of the film when they're panning over Jake's place and he's got a scarecrow out the front. I can't think where the nearest crop to that scarecrow could possibly be.
Yeah, we're back on there's no industry anywhere near.
There are abandoned mine shafts.
Yeah, which just seem to have pet food makers living in them.
Yeah, that was something else that I noticed was they were actually they did a lot of ticking of boxes of I guess where they were filming because I couldn't actually find specifics on where the actual film was made or was shot.
It was Broken Hill.
It was Broken Hill?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there was a thing at the end.
In the credits also it said Broken Hill unit.
Right. Because, yeah, they suddenly drop opal mining into the middle of it. Like these two evil guys that work in the pet pack are opal mining in their spare time or something.
Yeah, that was the single only mention of opal mining. Is that even a Broken Hill thing? I know it's Cuba Pedy. Is it much of Broken Hill?
No, what they get in Broken Hill. I thought it was...
Well, it's not set in Broken Hill, though.
No.
It's set in Gamara.
It's set in Gamara.
Wherever that shit.
Well, here we go. This is my
you did some
Is
work
this
on
a real
this.
place?
No, it's not. So Gamara doesn't exist, and I couldn't find any reference to it being an actual Aboriginal word either, so I'm guessing it's just purely made up for the film. But what I did do was she actually says we are 600 miles west of Sydney.
She did, didn't she?
Yeah. Now, I did a check on that. I wanted to see roughly where that
to
was.
calibrate.
And
Got the map and the compass.
It's just around Mildura.
Ah.
In fact, 600 miles, which is pretty much 1,000 kilometres, more or less. There's a place called Mungo National Park, which is right around there. And funnily enough, Mungo National Park itself advertises itself as Mad Max country. So,
Of course.
because I
But this is
reckon,
definitely Mad Max country.
yeah, well, there's a sequence, isn't there, where he actually climbs onto a mountaintop. I think it's a dream sequence. One of the ones where the flares were coming. It was good for
What
them to
was with that? The flares.
letting us know it was a dream sequence. It's okay, dream.
How bloody stupid is the American guy, sorry, Canadian guy?
I think he's really American. He's just that's part of his cover
Canadian.
identity for the.
Yes, he's-
Oh, I knew he lived in New York. I just figured, lots of Canadians.
Well, he also
live
pretends
in
to be
New
called
York.
Bill. So
That's true.
Yeah. In what particular way was he really stupid? Yes.
So,
but-
okay, I just turn up at this town. I've got no idea what I'm doing. I figure I can just get to this place that's in the middle of nowhere and get a hire car or a taxi. Yeah, but he assumes there'd also be a room there. So, I don't know. I guess if you're used to going to places where it should have all these services, fine. But then he just goes off by himself, no map, anything, and he goes off with the two absolutely obvious crazy men.
Yeah.
And who leave him in the middle of nowhere at night and say, stay here or won't be able to find you.
Do
Takes
Australians seem so crazy to Americans of that time period that a crazier one doesn't really register, that they're all crazy and so you lose track of...
You don't go with them.
With the dude with the weird shaved patch in the back of the head. Did you notice that in David Argue's
No.
hair? He has like a shaved section just around the back of his temple.
Ew, no.
Is there such a thing as a back of the temple? Temple's the front part.
Temple is a side part.
Is it? Oh, there we go. In that case, it's towards the back. It's past the ear. It was very strange.
In the post-temple area.
This was the thing that I
Yeah.
couldn't work out about him, because it's like he turns the crazy on and off. He goes uber hardcore crazy, and then he's suddenly incredibly well spoken for a brief time.
I missed
and then...
those brief periods of time.
Oh, they were very brief, but there's a couple of bits where he's towards the end when the American-Canadian guy is
the Aberradian.
the Aberranian, yes, is actually about to kill him, and he's discussing the don't kill me or shoot me, and
I'm a kangaroo.
yeah, I'm a kangaroo part was not one of the more well-spoken parts. That's not what I was saying. But,
Yeah, I think his thesis may have fallen down there.
yeah, true.
No, he had serious mental health issues.
Oh yeah. But he did.
Like, he shot at his brother.
I know, the just random use of rifles that people had in this.
Yes.
The idea that you confront someone, have a bit of a discussion, turn around, and as you're driving off, they start shooting at your car, and you just carry on like it's normal.
This is pretty John Howard, mate.
Yeah. And speaking of John Howard, can
There
I
we go.
say, he was one hell of a stud muffin back in the day. He was pretty much classic
What on
80s
earth are you
handsome.
talking about?
Did you not notice that?
Not the politician, the...
Obviously.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
The actor John Howard was in this as the Australian camera guy, as Danny.
Yeah.
Oh, is that who that was?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
So much different from the sort of the image he had. He had the
From the
square
one who issued the
jaw.
apology to Australia on the games.
That's the one.
Different
Yeah.
to that one.
Yes. Yeah, he was like a real... He had a period where he was like classic 80s stud. Big jaw and...
This I was a bit more used to because he's in what has been my favourite Australian film, The Club, which was only 3 years before.
I have still not seen The Club. So...
Oh, the club's highly worth watching.
Mm. I'd like to know which acting company actually held Jack Thompson down and dropped him to the bottom of a cave or something so he didn't appear in this, because I thought there was a period where he would appear in
He's
everything.
legally obliged to be in every Australian film.
Yeah, well, when I was
We're doing another one.
when I was explaining as rounding out the genre to another friend of mine what Ozploitation was, and I started reciting the actors that usually turn up, and I realised none of the usual stalwarts turned up in this one.
No.
There was no Bruce Spence, there was no Graham Blundell, there was no Abigail.
No. And what's interesting for me is the number of people that were in this that actually went on to have semi-decent careers. So Bill Kerr was actually huge. Bill Kerr had a massive acting line up to that point. He was actually in a series of Doctor Who, by the way.
He was,
Did
yeah.
A bunch of English stuff.
I was listening to a review of that just the other day. So.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. I actually only saw that from the joys of the internet. I don't know whether or not we should name brands. Is
not the
IMDb a brand? I was gonna say,
ABC.
is IMDb a brand? No. But, yeah, he was...
By the way, eat Vegemite.
There was Vegemite. Vegemite
There was
making an appearance.
Vegemite on
Yes.
the table. Yes, you're right.
And there was the 4X sign.
There was a 4X. Did you see what the brand name said? A 4X, the popular beer or something, I think. It was like a really mild... Or the preferred beer? It was something that was just so non-hard sell. Everybody else
Oh,
kinda
they're
likes
so
it.
laid back with...
The one beer that we have.
Yeah.
Have you heard the early VB adverts?
No.
They sort of slowly became more rugged and intense over the years. Like, you've probably seen the VB adverts where it's like,
You can get it farming. You
Yeah.
can get it shearing.
Getting
And-
pig shooting.
And it's always stuff that sounds like really physically intense, you know, even if not necessarily combative, something that would certainly
It's
take
a
it out of
blokey
you.
blokes thing, yeah.
Yes.
But the early ones still like painting his house, or he's exasperated because more relatives than he thought are coming over.
Wow. And that's a fantastic message. You should drink VB.
More
so you can-
relatives are coming. I need a drink.
Yes.
Also, fun fact, it didn't used to be the VB jingle. It used to be for a beer called Gold Top.
So was Gold Top and then became VB? Or Gold Top was different beer completely?
I don't know enough about the beer
The history
ownership.
of brewing in this country. I can't believe it.
I don't know if one company bought the other, or if this was a different brand, or someone just went out of business or what, but Gold Top, I think, didn't take off, or at least not for that advertising campaign, and then a couple of years later, VB get it, and people know it to this day.
Oh, God, there you go. I got vague memories of a beer called KB back in the day, which dropped off the radar in the late 80s, early 90s. Maybe because everybody called it kids' beer, so,
Ew.
yeah. Mm.
But also, our favourite beer dropped off the radar.
What was that?
It was called Piss,
Yeah, it was a
and
small
the
independent
light
brewery.
version was called Piss Week.
It was awesome. And it tasted really good, too.
It was good.
I was never much of a beer drinker, so I sort of only knew them from adverts most of
We
the
only
time.
ever found this in Mackay,
Oh,
despite it being from Melbourne.
Yeah, yeah.
After we
Which is
moved back,
really
I had Callum
Hunt
shipped a case for your birthday.
strange. You were very nice.
The poor delivery bloke on these hot days say, "Is that what it says it is?" Yeah, I'm really sorry, mate.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, very strange. So that might be something else we do as well as the Australian animals. Is there Foster's? Is there VB or 4X? Is there Vegemite?
I see Podsploitation bingo
I
approaching.
definitely think we might have to draw up some Podsploitation bingo cards because...
in fact, that's something a little different from modern product placement. In modern product placement, if you've got an actual product placement deal, if, say, Foster's had been the product-placed beer, then all the beer in the movie would have been Foster's.
Yes.
Mm.
And you wouldn't have seen that 4X sign, and I don't know if anyone was drinking something else, but there'd just be no question that anything besides Foster's existed in the beer taps of this universe.
Yeah, I've got a vague memory that there was a moment where somebody drank an Emu Export or something Export. I've got a half-second glimpse of something like that, which is actually a beer that they might have drunk. Well, 4X they would have drunk. Yes, Foster's, I don't think anybody drank in
Oh,
Australia.
people did.
Yeah, I certainly remember
Actually, no, you're
people
right.
drinking
Yeah,
it. I think it was more
I'll dial
popular
that
here.
back.
More popular here at one point, especially for rural people, from what I remember.
Yeah, true. Rural people. The kind of people that would live in a town with no industry. And the kind of people who ride their horses into bars.
And put a stereo on a camel.
Yeah, I like the camel stereo. I thought that was pretty cool. Is that the only time I've seen a camel with a stereo? I know it's going to sound like a really stupid thing to say. No, but
I really want this to be a whole series. You can think of a stereo camel in a whole different
I haven't-
series.
Was there one in Ishtar? Because that sounds like the sort of thing they do.
Well, this
One
is the
in
one I'm
what, sorry?
thinking.
Ishtar. It's a...
Famously, supposedly famously bad movie.
Yeah, I've not seen it, or at least I've not seen enough.
Dustin Hoffman?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the one that's got the song "The Girl from Ipanema" as like one of the main known songs from it.
Does the whole movie take place in an elevator?
Sadly not.
I'm
There is some actual
disappointed.
desertness. But I do have vague memories of like musical devices on camels, maybe mostly from the Middle East type setting films. Anyway, that's
Yes, I remember that was Middle East set in the 1980s, and I think supposedly a comedy. So
Yeah.
it does seem like the right confluence of factors to make that happen.
It would work. Two things that I remember from the courtroom bit at the start. The first part was the fact that there's that moment where he's in this really white, just basically got the bars, the shadow of the bars on him in the very start of the prison.
Oh,
It was almost like a theatre shot. It's like, we need to establish he's in prison, so we have courtroom over the background while he's in this incredibly well-lit, arty thing. And I'm like, okay, so there's going to be at least a level of art style in the film. This isn't going to be completely real, which is true, because, my God, some of the sequences later on in this film, where there's bits where you can't tell whether it's actually happening or not. But the other part is, I recognise that, you know, he's in court, he's being held because because his grandson's not there anymore. Did they think he went crazy and then burned his own house down?
Well, it'd be really interesting to know if there was anything at the house left as well.
Yeah.
Which also brings up... Oh, no, I suppose we did kind of see that he more or less lives out of his vehicle these days.
Yeah.
So probably he just scavenged what he could from his house after the boar arsonist went through.
Yeah, and then he starts, considering he knows that there's a boar out there that can destroy houses, eat children whole, and set fire to things, and he sleeps outside. There's that cut just before the opening title where he's sleeping on a camp bed outside, as opposed to getting in his car and going literally anywhere else. And I mean, this was always the big thing.
Or in fact, sleeping in the bed of the car.
Instead of going,
yes,
fuck this, going back to Big Smoke and a work in Woolies.
Because that's always been the big thing, especially when the Jaws franchise carried on after about the second or the third one, and they're like, just move away from the ocean. The one with Michael Caine in it, where they actually fly to an island. It's like, yeah, that'll help. And it's like, yeah, just leave the desert. Go somewhere else. But no, apparently he was driven. He had to.
Well, he has to stay in Gomorrah because it's such a centre of industry.
Yeah, apparently so.
Well, also, we saw his house to begin with, and it was one of the actual structures in the film that could be described as a house, so maybe he's really well off.
Yeah, this is the other thing, there's no industry, there's no houses either.
No, there really aren't. There's a lot of lean-tos.
There were three.
Well, there's the courthouse.
We saw three... we saw three residences. We saw the one that he lost to the pig at the start.
Yes.
We saw the one where the entire half of the room is taken away with Don Lane on TV.
Yes.
And that was part of about 6 or 7. And then, of course, there's the scientist woman whose sciencing money is getting her from science.
Oh, yeah, she gets grants to track the pigs and track migration and health and growth.
It's like they use science to sort of explain every aspect of why she's there and what she's doing and why she... Which is, like the GPS tracker.
Oh my god, that was just gold.
Turn on that electronic doohickey.
It was like all the quick typing in the world. That would have done absolutely nothing, whereas pressing the on button would have probably helped.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, now she'd have an app for it anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
But yeah, so she...
Oh, yeah, no, that's where I was going with that. But he refuses to... Jake refuses to take money from Sarah.
Yeah.
Because she employs him. But
yeah, and he is obviously helping her with the research because he delivers a small pig to her at this sequence.
Yes, so he's...
After the obligatory breast shot.
Independently wealthy with...
Yeah.
God knows.
The sources of income in this movie are incredibly
boob
vague.
shot, because it was the 80s and it's inevitable you must have a boob shot. I was surprised we didn't get one during the Beth almost rape scene.
Yeah, and that was actually interesting because that one... I remember thinking, okay, this is following a few of the beats of Mad Max, like we've discussed before, the tank of a car that the kangaroo hunters have, and then driving off the road. And then in Mad Max 2, there is an actual rape scene.
Is it?
Yeah, right at the very start when we're establishing, and that's the thing, you use that as a way of establishing the bad guys. You don't use it. In this day and age, you should be able to come up with some better way of saying these people are bad than, oh my god, they're raping. But it was an absolute stalwart, as you say, of those films.
Still is.
But it's like they needed to tick every box of why are these guys bad. So we see them being terrible to people in a pub. And then rape. And then they kill a dog. It's then obviously we have to keep reminding ourselves that they're bad because the dog killing scene happens 3/4 of the way through the movie.
Yeah.
That's a thing that you do. Okay, this is how bad
You're well and truly established. But I think it's just, reiterating how crazy that guy, David Argue is.
Yes.
Because even his brother saying, why did you do that?
Yes. Because the random replicant eyes in the sequence where he turns around and looks at
that? The eyes?
Yeah, well, his brother Benny has something up with one of his eyes.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? So Benny's got the one eye that's all broken and messed up.
Mind you, that just seems to be the state of his eye, so...
Yeah. I don't know why they felt the need to try and make him a replicant at one point, but...
It's surprising.
They did some weirdness. There was some real weirdness in that David Argue, which I guess was what he was just told to do, was be weird.
Did anyone get the impression... Like, at the end, where the Razorback ends back at the pet pack.
Oh, back at Pet Pack.
Did you get some weird impression that it was, like, accidentally engineered? Like, if they'd had more of a science thread, it would have been accidentally engineered at that place?
Oh, you're coming back on there's no explanation for why this thing exists.
But it ends up back there.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it was returning home or something. Okay, this is possibly something that only happened in my head.
No. I can actually, that could make sense. Cause
it seems to have some
kind
of...
make sense.
Connection with the place.
Yeah, and also some kind of beyond an average pig awareness, because we basically see it being general to the regular pigs.
Yes.
When they're charging Carl up the windmill.
Yeah, that
was very entertaining. Oh, were you thinking Tremors when watching that scene? Anyone else?
No, but you're absolutely right.
I haven't seen Tremors, so...
Do you know the...
I'm aware of it, I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, actually, this probably has a very similar thing.
Yeah, there were some Tremors moments in it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Tremors is that it's in a desert rather than out to sea, and it's a very similar kind of Jaws, you never know where it's going to come from thing. And the pig was a bit like that too. Yeah, you're right, actually. It had very definite Tremors tang. But that was the thing, this was like about 6 or 7 different movies. It was really weird.
And I was just thinking, the Razor plot and the Criminally Insane Brothers plot actually do intersect.
Yeah.
In that it is relevant that the only reason Beth becomes boar chow is because they knocked off the road and attacked her, and basically that means she was all over the place when Razor showed up and gored down on her.
Yeah.
So, which was making me think, is it attracted by blood? But then further scenes dispelled that anyway.
We see this...
Like, it was sometimes like that seemed like that would be drawing it. Sorry,
I don't know if we're supposed to be discerning a motive, as it were.
Yeah.
Little tiny trotters going, tiny, huge trotters going...
I may have...
I mean, it's probably reasonable to think, not without over-defending the plot, that those people are the only thing making any sound and light out there, so Razor went, well, what's all this then? Might be something worth eating.
Yeah, I think that's...
Pigs are very smart.
Well, this is the thing that's interesting to me. So, this was based on a book.
So I've heard.
Yeah, so this was based on a book from a few years before. Not that many years before. I think late 70s it was. And I'm really curious to know about that, because I remember reading Jaws, possibly before I saw it. I'm not too sure, but we certainly had Jaws as a book in our house when I was very young. And there's a lot of little scientific snippets about sharks, about how incredible they are. And you get a little taste of that in the movie Jaws. So there's sequences where Hooper, Richard Dreyfuss's character, is sort of explaining basics about shark science and so on. I'm wondering if there's a whole bunch of stuff about razorbacks. Because there was some random... Do you remember the bit in the court? About how they're bulletproof on top because of the bristles? You have to shoot them from underneath.
Which is how, when he finally killed it, it's because he was underneath the pig.
Yeah, with the big sticking thing.
Yeah, and basically drove it into it and then finished it off with the blades.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was all underneath. So they gave that little bit of a nod, and I wonder if there's a bunch more I mean, it could just be a nonsense book. I don't know.
Well, this is one of the things that really annoys me when I listen to film reviews based on books when the reviewer has clearly not read the book. It's like, well, if you just read the book, this would all make sense. So I'm kind of yelling at myself now.
But that's the thing, though, is that I still think that movies should stand on their own. A movie should never, when you're making a film, even if you base it on a book, it shouldn't be that you need to have the book knowledge to enjoy the movie.
True.
I can kind of recognise that.
You are right.
I think somebody specifically having a go at the storyline of a movie...
Yes, which I have heard that drives me mad.
When it's based off a book is possibly wrong. But yeah, I think the movie should stand.
Damn it, there's no way J.K. Rowling was wrong. Clearly the reviewer is.
Oh, of course.
That also means it's one of those monster movies where the rules are intact. It's not one of those ones where it's invulnerable for the whole movie and then it suddenly has a weakness when it's time for the final reel.
Let's upload a virus into the pig.
Pixomatosis.
Yeah, that's And I'd like to say just a couple of things on the pig itself. So first off, we talked about the total cost of the movie. The full-size boar, just the full-size one they built one full-scale.
Yes.
$250,000 just on its own. So that's a fair bit of money where the money went.
There were 5 teams working just on the pig.
Yeah, apparently it was like really... And I thought it looked really good. I remember the sequence where she's panning across the sunset and the pig was just there. Yeah, and I think that was actually a real pig though, wasn't it?
I don't know. I just saw what was on the screen. I mean, they made it pretty well. I can't remember thinking, well, look at that. It's 1984, all right.
Yeah.
No.
The only bit where it even kind of really pegged in my brain as not being real was the moment when it's first running through the building and it's obviously just a still pig on a track. It's like a model and they're throwing crap past it because it's not moving. But I thought the sequences it went down the end when the mouth is there and you can see the ridges on the roof of the mouth. Even when it's standing, when he's looking at the piglets and you catch it first behind the trough and you see the edges, I thought that looked fine.
Yeah, it did.
And I'm wondering, because Jaws famously didn't show much of the shark, Bruce.
Isn't that because it was always broken?
Because it was terrible. Because apparently it looked awful and it was always broken. the same thing was happening here, but I don't know if that was because it didn't look bad or if they realised from the Jaws movies that it's actually scarier to not see that much of the monster, because that's the big thing they say about Jaws. One of the reasons Jaws works so well is that you barely see the shark at all. And it's the same with this, which is then why would you drop, in Australia, why would you drop $250,000 on something you're not going to show very much, especially if it looks kind of okay?
Yeah, I was fine with
There was a whole person that was just for the eyes.
Yeah, there was a close-up of the eye, the sequence where the light goes past the eyeball.
And there was like a whole person that was just, like, there was the inside of Razorback and the outside and Fair and stuff, and there was one person just for eyes. And I thought, clearly it was very good, but surely that wasn't entirely necessary. It looked great, but...
Mind you, animatronics was a craft where there was a very rapid curve of how good it could look and how many people would take to do comparatively simple things.
Yeah, true.
I remember the 1990 Ninja Turtles film. I, in fact, remember reading about how only a few years before that, trying to do what they did in that would have been impossible or at least prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
Was that 1990? 90?
90.
Wow.
As opposed to 1919?
No. Sorry, as opposed to a 1990s movie.
Oh, okay.
I'm really surprised that was a 1990. I mean, Jim Henson was a genius, absolute god. But wow, I didn't realise how early that was. That's great. Although apparently, if you watch the Blu-ray, especially release of the original Ninja Turtles, you can actually see the actors' heads behind the mouths in places.
Oh,
that looks a
really?
bit like a turtle's eating a human. So yeah, no, I didn't think they did very badly at all with the pig. I thought that was
they
really
did very
good.
well.
Is that how big Razorbacks can get? I know nothing about real pigs.
That's a really good question. I don't know.
I don't know. Wild hogs get pretty bloody huge.
Yeah, I mean, he said it was, the size of a rhino, but you put that down to hyperbole. But I know it was a big...
Well, I think we can safely say it wasn't the size of a rhino because we could see it.
Because, yes, exactly. And
or he just doesn't know how big rhinos are.
Well, there's that, yes.
And Ace Ventura didn't fall out the back of it. But, nothing? Okay, never mind.
Nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't seem overly huge. I think the bit where it was hiding behind the trough was actually pretty cool. So
yeah.
Yeah, I'll be really curious to see, because I wanted to actually see some production shots. I went looking online to see if there was a bunch of photos of the actual production. I couldn't find them easily. That doesn't mean they're not there. But I wanted to see what it looked like.
In the court scene, they said it was 4 to 5 times the size of a normal Razorback. Then I have no concept.
Well, David Argue said that, so we're going to trust anything that character said.
Yeah, no, fair call. So actually, that was moment when he was lucid.
Yeah.
Now, the one other thing I did want to say about the film itself was the American Alien. Played by the guy Gregory Harrison, who was specifically chosen because the other suggestion, Jeff Bridges, was felt to not be as big an international draw.
What?
Yeah, and this was after Jeff Bridges had already been in Tron.
Wow.
And as far as I could tell, Gregory Harrison hadn't actually been in anything. Well, not big.
Yeah, I looked him up too. He's been in a few things. He's kept himself busy, and I'm not going to say he's, horrid or anything, but maybe they thought he was up and coming and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like he was the Nick Stahl of his era.
And, I mean, I'm not going to lie that he wasn't, from that time period, an unattractive man. He was a relatively attractive guy. But Jeff Bridges from the same time period, and if you get a chance to look online, you've got to have a look for a picture of Jeff Bridges.
Gosh, that's Jeff Bridges.
So that's what Jeff Bridges looked like at the same time period. I can't remember which movie that one's from, but it was around the same time. So he, even if nobody knew his name, he would have been a very attractive man and a draw card, I reckon.
Yeah.
So.
It was a thing that went on for ages and still occasionally pops up, that non-American films would put some American personal element in them under the belief, and this is also a symptom of American producers and distributors having very little faith in American audiences. This wouldn't accept anything without an American in it. I mean, sometimes it would be based on the scale of the name. If we put someone huge in it, people go to see it.
Yeah.
But you'd also sometimes just get like, well, the Americans aren't going to watch a film full of Australians, so we've got to have Patrick Warburton visiting to look at satellite dishes.
Right. Yes. Yeah, no, it's a good thing that we've stepped away from America feeling that it has to stick its own people in foreign-type movies so that they can actually get the following now. I'm glad that we've stepped on from there.
Now they push remake it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, now we stick Matt Damon in something. Which makes sense, because Matt Damon's coming to Australia, so you never know.
In fact, it looks like there may be a remake of this film coming.
That was the other thing I was going to mention. So there is a movie to be released sometime this year called Boar.
Boar? Yeah. I thought we all should that.
Oh, really? Okay, nice. So you picked that as well, yeah.
Yeah, and it's about a big monster boar ravaging the Australian outback, and that's fairly niche.
Yeah. And it's interesting.
We'll have to get our bingo cards ready for the premiere.
Well, it's funny because it's got John Jarratt, of course.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Again, John Jarratt is the person you've got to put in an Australian film. It's got the one other hit gear that I would have really expected to see in an Ozploitation movie, which is Steve Bisley, who was in a lot of those films. He was the guy who was Mad Max's offsider in the original Mad Max. He was in a bunch of movies. But interestingly, it has, and I actually wrote this one down because I wanted to make sure I remembered his name, it's got special appearance by Chris Haywood. Now, Chris Haywood is David Argue's offsider in Razorback.
Oh.
And he was always the bad guy. So he was actually a British actor because he was the bad influence of the ex-con out of Malcolm. So he's the bloke who goes stealing. He's also the lead bad guy in the original Man from Snowy River. So he's the bloke who sets the horse free and, studying to be supervisor. So he was in Razorback, and he's going to make a special appearance in Boar.
Mm.
Yeah. But I was blown away when I saw that there was a...
So, what was the character's name? David Argue's brother?
Benny.
Benny.
That's right.
And the other one was Dicko?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did Benny live at the end? Because he was down the mine shaft. He was attached.
I think we didn't find out for certain.
You see, I thought that he died because you hear his descending scream.
You do hear a descending scream, but you don't hear a thump. There's a shattering kaboom.
Yeah, that's what I was counting as not knowing for certain.
Yeah.
That his demise looked fairly likely, and it's not like there was anyone else around to get him out of the hole, even if he landed softly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Or could he climb back up the rope?
I'm not a violent man. Where's your brother now?
I don't know. Where's your brother now, Benny?
Where is your brother now?
Backpack! It's a backpack! Help me out, mate! Don't leave me here! I'll come and give you a hand! Hey, mister! Oi! Don't leave me! Hey!
But we had to make Carl a hero. He couldn't kill him in cold blood after kicking stones in his face and everything, so he walks away. But we do hear the scream, and I kind of assumed that meant that he died too, but maybe he didn't. Yeah.
I mean, it's very unlikely that even if he survived the fall, I don't know what that hole was.
No.
I mean...
Was he at another mine shaft?
Is it one you're supposed to be able to get in and out of? It looked like the rope was just not actually properly fastened at the top, so if he tried to pull himself up, he'd just pull it down.
Yeah, I know that when they're opal mining, the mines themselves are the bare minimum size they need to be because it's such hard rock to kind of get down. You don't really have the luxury of making huge, expansive space. You literally kind of, get down to as much as you can and then get into that area. But yeah, it looked pretty deep and dark and not easily removable from. Oh yeah, the body count, because you just made me think about the body count. Yeah. So the body count in this movie is actually really small, isn't it?
It's not huge.
You've got the baby.
There's not that many people.
But that's even in Jaws. They make a point of killing a bunch of people that are just ancillaries or can pop into the boat at a moment's notice.
Sure.
Whereas with this, pretty much everybody who dies, if you include the baby at the beginning as the kind of the initial driving force behind Screamy Bill Kerr's descent into madness. But there's already, even in Jaws, there's references to a couple of other people that have been taken, and there's a the guy whose mutant face appears in the hole of the boat to startle Hooper when he dives for the first time, to show that he's been trying to, go fishing and find Jaws. Mm-hmm. But in this, it is just...
Beth.
Yeah, so we got Beth.
Start with the baby, Christopher.
Yep. So, oh wow. So we got Christopher, Beth, Bill Kerr's Screaming Man. He does actually get eaten by the... Yeah, he gets eaten in the...
In fact, my notes...
there's the random bloke who has no name that worked in the factory.
Oh yeah, that's right. He spontaneously just dies on the floor, and we assume the pig must have got him at some point.
Or something.
My notes for the other scene say, Razor finds Jake om nom nom.
Yeah, that was, I don't know. So I guess the big question is there meaning behind this movie?
Yeah. I think it's don't visit Australia, to be honest.
Which seemed to be a kind of a stalwart of the Ozploitation for a long time.
Yeah.
basically the whole of Australia.
If the animals don't kill you, the locals will.
And I do like the idea that we have to create special scary animals, because the ones we do have are obviously not scary enough.
I wonder if that was another sop to the overseas market, that foreigners know what a pig is.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Right.
Yeah, that if it was some less spread around form of Australian wildlife, then the same mentality that says Americans won't go see this if Gregory Harrison isn't in it.
It's like, the quokka is just not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Although I love the idea of a quokka stealing people's souls through selfies. A couple of other things that stuck with me is there was very minimal music, which was interesting because there were a couple of actual 80s music tracks. But the bit that was there was very much classic horror, janky-jarry notes. If you ever watched In Bad Taste or Brain Dead, it's almost done in a mocking way of that. And the actual opening sequence was a very similar sounding setup to The Wraith, the movie The Wraith.
Oh, I don't remember that far back.
The Wraith, which is an American movie. It was a really dodgy 80s film.
Is that the one with a guy regeneration of Charlie Sheen?
That's the one, yes. Yes, a guy regenerates of Charlie Sheen. It sounds a lot less attractive than it used to be.
But that would totally be on the Polish movie poster.
Actually, I wonder if there was a Polish movie poster, but probably not. It was a bit small. Yeah, so the music actually sounds, in the opening sequence, sounds very similar to The Wraith, but I don't know if that's just because of the time frame, because it was very much the same era. But there's build-up, and then the big kind of climax of the music to the moment of the reveal of the title of the movie is very much like that.
Oh, I was listening to another review, and I can't remember what it was, but some other film, someone saying it's music like The Wraith, which...
Oh!
I've listened to so many film reviews lately. Yeah, no, that's not even going to come back.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is something that resonates with people and composers as well as viewers.
Well, there you go. Maybe it isn't just simply the time. Maybe it actually was a legitimate bit of its own music. The soundtrack is really minimal. There's not much music. In fact, a lot of the dream sequences and stuff, zero sound.
Yeah.
It's all just basically SFX and that's it. So
yeah. And I watched it with my flatmate, and she was just messing about and just singing Great Southern Land over the...
Oh, yes.
And she realised not only is she having fun watching a movie, but you actually kind of expect them to have played that.
Yes.
Actually, yeah, I come to think of it, there is a moment, there's a couple of shots in widescreen.
Is Great Southern Land an Ice House song? I think it might be.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's the one where it's used in what's the Yahoo series movie?
Young Einstein.
Young Einstein when he's walking through the outback and they play that song.
So there actually, and I'm hesitant to say it because I don't know anything about it, but there's another context to this. A couple of years before this film was made, so we got the whole thing about the dodgy pet food. There was some weird scandal about food qualities and dodgy stuff being made in Australia, and there was an inquiry into meat.
Ah.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing I mentioned before. It didn't seem like shooting kangaroos to make pet food was anything that would have been unusual. It seemed really strange to make a big deal about that beyond the fact.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because who doesn't...
That.
Yeah, I mean, kangaroo was very...
I think also, to, again, that lovely nebulous non-Australian audience, and indeed to a lot of people in Australia, the kangaroo is this noble beast. The idea that it has been felled and used for cheap fodder for golden retrievers is insulting.
Yeah.
What she says is, is there any truth to the rumours that kangaroos are becoming extinct? It's like, well... no way on God's green earth is that possibly happening.
I hadn't realised that part of it because it was also an aspect of Wake in Fright. So there's a big thing about in Wake in Fright about how the kangaroo could go extinct. But you're right. I mean, up until really recently, I had an American friend who was really surprised that we hit kangaroos on the side of the road, and just die there. And it's like...
we also eat our coat of arms.
Last year, more than 800,000 kangaroos and wallabies were slaughtered in this district alone. They were summarily gutted and quartered and dumped at the Pet Pack Cannery 8 miles west of here to become dog excreta on the sidewalks of Sydney, Hong Kong, and New York.
So the year that this movie was released, it was actually nominated for a bunch of Australian Film Institute Awards from 1984 and won 3 of them.
Alrighty.
Oh, actually, no, sorry. It won 2 Australian Film Institute and then also won another one as well. Can you imagine, just as a vague thing, can you imagine anything about this movie you would consider award-worthy?
Cinematography?
Cinematography, well done. It won Best Cinematographer for Dean Semler from that film. And it was also the separate little award. It won the Australian Cinematographer Society Cinematographer of the Year award for it too, which makes sense because it's a genuinely pretty movie. I actually really was surprised. I mean,
when you can actually see stuff, the stuff you see is nice.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of fog in the foreground, shadow, and then a light in the back. There's an awful lot of random lighting in the bush, isn't there?
It really is.
Just random bright lights sitting behind trees and behind... Although, there was one shot which I remember you see the moon with clouds in the foreground.
There are two moons. There's a scene where there are two moons.
Yes, there's a moon in the sky and then a moon further down on the left-hand side.
I missed that.
But there's one where you actually see the moon with cloud, and then the camera pans, and it kind of amazes me that could be a genuine in-camera shot. So I don't know if they actually cut a giant bit of background and made a fake moon with clouds, but it looks really awesome. I didn't note down the timestamp on it, but yeah, the lighting in this is pretty amazing, and the cinematography is actually... Which I guess is what you want from an Ozploitation movie, because if you're going to do anything, you want to make the country look striking. Because let's face it.
Well, this was definitely a thing a lot of Australian films have tried to build on or pitch their work on. We're going to show off how pretty this country is to everyone else in the world.
While showing you that everything and everyone in it is something that wants to harm you.
Batshit crazy and evil. Which, I mean, I guess that works, because, I mean, it's certainly, one of the criticism brackets positive critiques of the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies is they're basically a picture postcard for New Zealand.
So what was the other award?
So, yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry. So the other award was Best Editing for William N. Anderson. It won that one as well. It was nominated for Best Original Music Score.
That's interesting.
Yeah, which is considering because this was what actually got me onto the awards, considering we were just discussing how there's practically no actual music in the film at all.
But I guess knowing when not to use music is still definitely a part of it.
Well, that's very true.
This is true, yeah. It was also nominated for Best Production Design, Best Sound, and Best Adapted Screenplay.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I guess that's the novel part of it coming out. I'm going to have to read the novel. I'm going to have to try and find a copy now and see. Because, of course, Die Hard famously is based on a book.
Which is so not related to the movie at all. It's, so different.
The book that Die Hard was based on was the sequel to another book which was also filmed, but with Frank Sinatra in the lead role.
Ah.
And if what I've heard is correct, that Frank Sinatra actually still had an option to star in any adaptation of that, even up to the time Die Hard was made.
That explains why I always see other people suggested for Die Hard, and Frank Sinatra's head pops up. I'm like, seriously? Because I know that... I don't know, I'm mixing my movies. But yeah, so there were a few people that they had in mind for Die Hard. Because at the time, Bruce Willis was not an action hero at all. He was off moonlighting and stuff. Anyway, yeah, sorry, no, we're getting off. But yeah, it was also nominated for the grand prize at the Avoirez Fantastic Film Festival and didn't win. Yeah, following that link, which was the wiki link for the film, was where I actually learned about boar, because down the bottom it said, see also boar. And I looked at that and it's like,
same here.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, when I was tootling around in YouTube during a recording break, the trailer to Boar was actually the first one that came up.
Okay, cabin fever is officially set in. I suggest the next town we come to, we pull over and get some grub.
Good idea. Sounds great.
Someone's been tearing the fences down there at the old Addison's farm there.
He found a few sheep too. Huh? Something's killed them, yeah.
Well, what, all 9 of them?
There's nothing out there except dust and ruse.
That's a load of shit, Ernie, and you know it. You remember that smash up on the highway coming into town, right? About 12 months ago? They couldn't find the couple. All the police found was the wrecked car. I was driving back from Bob's place in me truck, and I saw something in the paddock, about 300 or 400 metres off, and I hit the spotty on it. It was a boar.
I'm going to have to check that out. So yeah, I think that was pretty much everything. I remember thinking, because it had a lot of, like, beats that were very Mad Maxy from, like, cars and things. And then I remember looking at it and going, it's also a bit like Crocodile Dundee. I mean, it starts very much like Crocodile Dundee. An event happens. We don't see the event in Crocodile Dundee. And then a female American journalist learns about it and decides she's going to travel to nowhere, Australia, and actually then film the events that happen afterwards. Only, of course, in this one she dies really early on.
Okay, so Beth is driving around in this vehicle.
Yeah.
It's before Rent-A-Wreck existed. Surely, how did she come across that car that she ends up driving?
I think she, unlike her husband, I think actually had some form of contact in Australia.
Yes.
And I assume whatever got her camera operator, and she seemed to at least be aware of things in Australia.
Or at least the producers of her show were the people who sent her.
So it's possible that, you know, you get a camera operator, you get a free car or something. But that didn't bother me because it seemed someone had at least done some setting up for her, whereas Carl had apparently just jumped on
Do we know what his job is?
I will actually take 2 seconds to say that I was pretty sure, and I'm right, that was actually a contemporary vehicle from that time period.
Ah, Ford Falcon XL.
So it was a Ford, I think it was a Ford Falcon station wagon, but yeah, it was very much an actual contemporary car from the time, so it may have looked like a piece of shit by the time it got out to the middle of nowhere, but it was actually like a...
Yes.
Yeah.
I just read that.
It was Rent-A-Wreck, or...
Moreover, I didn't think about too hard the type of car.
Yeah.
And it was certainly wrecked by the time where you've got a proper look at it.
Well, that was actually something else I was going to say as well. The humorous...
She only drove 600 miles.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's practically nothing. That's a day trip. You can do Sydney to Mildura in a day-ish, just.
You can.
You wouldn't want to. But that moment where after she's been killed by the boar, and the guy who's towing the car is bitching and moaning about how some random person drives the car off the road, which, can I just point out, when you pan across, has exploded from the inside out.
Yeah.
The entire half of the car is gone. And then he's like, and then they wander off into the bush, and what do they expect us to go get them? Yes! Yes, they expect you to find the random person from America who's lost in the Australian Outback. And he's complaining about just, it's a real frustration.
He would get less money for the car than it costs to tow it.
I mean, surely even in the 80s...
Are there any forensics in this town whatsoever? Could someone just look at this vehicle and say, you know what? I think she just rolled.
No.
Yeah, well, to quote another famous trope, there are no police.
There are no police.
No police. Oh my God, you're absolutely...
But it didn't... Well, no, I thought of it, but it didn't surprise me because there's probably one copper for the, surrounding 500 kilometres.
You think they would have got him at some point, though? I mean, I know the phone apparently won't go to...
Far as back.
Yeah, to go... Which, can I just point out as well, actually, no, you talk amongst yourselves, because that was something that really occurred to me when he said that.
Yeah, I mean, I know, this isn't a bustling town with, a large police service and more than 3 buildings.
Yes.
But it's not exempt from the laws of the country.
Yeah, no, not at all.
You'd think, if nothing else, when Carl made some kind of fuss or someone someone must have contacted Beth's workplace.
Yes.
Because, well, otherwise Carl wouldn't find out.
Yeah, You'd
think at least something of this would trigger the local, whatever the Australian word for Bobby is, to at least have a poke around, or there'd be the whole idea of some copper from the Big Smoke having to come up and investigate this is a film all on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And can I just say, it's not like, I don't want to say that anyone is a nobody, but she's not a nobody. She has at least got a television news reporter who appears on TV as herself, so obviously she's got a following.
What channel is going to send an animal activist to the other side of the world?
Yes. Well, that was the thing. Is she an activist or a journalist? Because she talks about being an activist, and yet she's being broadcast as a live news report.
Well, you can be both.
Yeah, okay, true. Good point. But it seemed like a very local TV station too, didn't it? That was actually broadcasting it. But then again, that might just be the 80s coming through again. Yeah, no, I actually was going to sort of look up distance between Burke to Mildura, but I couldn't actually find it easily and quickly. But it's I would imagine, not a small distance. A few hundred miles.
But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there were, half a dozen cops over 300 kilometres.
Yeah, true. That's
there's a whole... What time frame does this movie happen in?
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah, it's so strange. There's because he's got enough time, the hero's got enough time to recover. Carl actually gets mostly better. But at the same time that Carl kind of almost completely recovers from having nearly died in the desert, and Actually, no. Jake actually gets done in the dam afterwards, doesn't he? So Carl recovers.
Yeah.
Yes.
He meets him after he recovers.
Yeah.
That's when everyone's at Sarah's place. But I got the impression that Jake found the ring in Razor's fresh leavings.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly what happened.
So I don't know how long it takes a Razorback to digest things, but...
If it takes 2 years, it's going to be shitting a whole lot of denim for a long time.
And if nothing else, there has to be enough time to get word back to New York, and they're very adamant that this is something you just can't do.
Mm.
Didn't they say something like there was a period of, it was like 2-3 months difference between her arriving and hubby?
No, the only bit that actually has any time frame is... Well, I know that the only bit they subtitle is the 2 years after the trial to the start of the film. But actually, yeah, I don't know. Does someone say how long? Much longer?
I don't know. For some reason, I thought 2-3 months. But then you're right. The whole film has zero sense of time.
Yeah, it really does. Actually, that's now that I think about it more and more.
Later.
Yeah, at the absolute minimum, word has to get back to New York. Carl has to get from New York to Gomorrah, and even if he goes, "Oh my goodness, that's terrible," jump straight on a flight just then.
It's a long time frame. Yeah. But the ring... So when did he find the... Did he have the ring on him? Does he turn up at...
Which he
Jake. Does he turn up at Sarah's farm with the ring in his hand?
Yes.
Yes, but after Sarah and Jake have... I thought they were going to go after Razor. It turns out it's just Jake.
Yes.
And she's saying, take a dart. And he's like, no, I just need my big gun.
3.
Yeah.
And 3 doesn't do nothing.
30 or something. Some reference to another gun on top of that.
Why don't they make the bullets out of whatever they make a dart out of?
Yes. And I did like the point that I love the point that he actually says, the dart gun, just to remind you, the viewer, that that's what he's picking up now that his actual gun's run out of bullets. Yeah. He actually does say that to himself, just so that you don't forget that part of it.
I know when I'm switching weapons in the middle of the desert, I make sure to do a roll call, as I do it in case any of the naughty gun students have run off together, perhaps, to form handguns.
I'd probably do that, because I just have a tendency to narrate what I do for no reason.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's because I watch movies for so long.
I fully film score mine, which is really weird because I can't sing. I have a question. Do we think he missed Razorback and got one of the other pigs with the dart? Or do we think that the Razorback somehow re-darted one of the little pigs?
Or did Razorback eat the little pig?
No.
I think that... is this when the townspeople...
Yeah.
But then they fly Razorback at the end. Because of the tag.
Yeah, I think they just don't know it's the wrong tag.
Yes.
Oh, so you think he's just following it completely right? So that's what she said. Actually, that's what she says, isn't it? That she got the wrong... She tuned into the wrong tag.
So they follow that...
There's the pig they released,
Yeah, absolutely
and
right.
it just looks like a little black pig, and they don't even bother. Just go...
Yeah, that must be the only possible pig that there was.
That's a small pig. Okay, I guess this adventure is over.
And they seem really excited about the adventure, I gotta say, when they ride off into the sunset.
And then Razor goes on the move, but because they've already had their false alarm, they're not interested, and this time it is.
Which
very easily dissuaded.
It's the radio tracker that cried wolf for this case.
It was, which is very much the trope. If you don't have the police, you've got to have at least somebody that doesn't believe any of it's true.
Oh, you're so right.
So, that's how they bring the village people. That's how they bring the townspeople round, or the pubs people, really. There is no town.
No one at all believes Jake that the Razorback burnt the house down after taking a child, but it doesn't take Sarah much convincing back at the pub to get the whole township to go with her.
It's really weird. I get this bizarre impression the town respects Sarah for some reason that's never really...
A town like that respecting a young woman? No.
Especially a scientist.
Well, yeah, I know.
She's a woman and a nerd.
Actually, that's a really good point, because another one of those big kind of the classic horror movie type trope is science bad.
You never believe the scientist.
Well, no, not so much that, but I mean the points of the film is to be science bad. So from Frankenstein's monster onwards, it's science bad, real world good.
Yeah.
Science is always the evil scientist. But you're right, from what you were saying before, because there's no storyline to Razorback, because Razorback isn't some scientific mutant or abomination, you don't get that from this movie.
Yeah,
at
in
all.
fact, it's almost surprising that there's not an account of Razor wandering through toxic waste or something.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any... Which, again, is another reason I want to read the book.
I think that
want
would
to
just
see
be
if there's
too
explanation.
complicated for this movie to add that.
Well, in some way, you've got to respect that economy of storytelling, because ultimately we don't really care why there's an enormous bore-out boring.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Is there only one?
Well, that's another question. I did wonder, are we supposed to conclude it's always the same bore? But I guess the film just does kind of expect us to conclude that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And there doesn't, unlike a lot of those types of films, there doesn't seem to be any setup for a sequel. And there was, as far as I can tell,
the sequel could
no
always
intent
be,
to make
actually,
one.
there's a son.
Son of Razorback.
Yes, exactly.
This time it's personal.
Mrs. Razor. Looks the same as Razor and got a big pink bow.
Now you're thinking video game.
I think that's Miss Pac-Man. Yeah.
Hang on, Pink Razor, that would be, was it...
Bic.
You're right, it does seem that at one point, Jake's...
His story.
Yeah, is seen as... No one really believes it, but they don't really invest enough in it to bother him or anything about it.
Yeah.
Then by the time we're up to the scene with the tracker and the radio, it sounds like the whole town is perpetually on the edge of their seats waiting to go get this
Kill
thing.
this thing, yes. Well, also, it's probably the most interesting thing that's happened in 30 years.
That's the thing I don't understand. Even if you're not 100% certain, wouldn't you just get involved for the hell of it? Wouldn't you be in there from the start?
Yes.
Just because what else are you going to do?
Exactly.
Between watching Don Lane and...
Drinking Tuies.
Drinking Tuies and working at the pet plant, which you're not allowed to work at because it's apparently an illegal factory.
I don't think it's too much to stretch to say, even if turning kangaroos into pet food is legal, that particular factory is not up to much.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
You know, kangaroo
If
is...
nothing else, a health and safety nightmare.
Yes. Kangaroo is a very environmentally sustainable meat and
Yes.
very popular for pet food for that. But how they were doing it, they're
not so much. And not particularly efficient either, because if you're Because if you're only taking as many as you shoot in a night of roo shooting, and every time we see them, even when they have the obligatory dead kangaroos, because that's another thing I've noticed in Ozploitation movies, is that not only do you have to have kangaroo, but if you can specify that there are dead kangaroos because crazy Australians eat them or something, that's always a bonus. There's only ever like half a dozen at a time.
There's 8 to 10 if it's a full truck.
Yeah, it seems they have about enough to run a butcher shop.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and
You're right. Actually, no, that wouldn't supply enough meat for the townspeople to eat.
No. Let alone the idea that you could be
An
delivering
international factory.
Yeah. And so why is she so fussed about this particular factory?
It's the only one there.
No, but I mean, from America, there's a whole...
Yeah, what takes her to
this tiny town's factory as being the one that upsets her the most?
And her intelligence seems to have her believe that Jake is the major roo shooting powerhouse in this environment.
Yes.
He gets there and he says, no, I kill pigs. And she's like, oh.
Yeah.
I really liked how Jake acted around Beth during that. And it wasn't, sod off, get out of my space. Like, well, does that mean you're a killer? If you say.
Yeah.
And I love that his reason, how does it make you feel, is basically, just makes me feel a little bit better every time. I like your honesty, sir.
Yep, true. Although I do remember the one other thing about that particular encounter was a stunt which they did, which would absolutely not be allowed now, where he drives off and actually bashes her out of the way with the side of the car. Now, it's one of those things, it seems like a really small thing.
Okay, what are you talking about?
Oh, Jake. When Jake, after the first encounter...
yes.
Yeah,
with Beth on the camera.
With Beth on the camera, and then he says, nothing like blasts on a Razorback just makes me feel great, or whatever it is his actual line is. And then he drives off, and the actress is genuinely sort of bunted out of the way by the side wing mirror. Now, I know it's one of those things that whenever you think stunts, you think massive, rolling downstairs while people shoot at you and explosions. But just even to the point of putting actors on the back of bicycles with no helmet is considered to be a genuinely dangerous stunt these days. That was pretty full on to really, if you see, there's a real solid bash on her arm when that happens.
We taped her back with newspapers.
So I guess the other question is, are we meant to take anything from this movie? Is there a message?
I think they want to start with a nice environmental message because this is 1984, so environmentalism hasn't become quite so partisan yet.
Mm-hmm.
People are still fairly in agreement that pollution and wrecking the planet is bad.
Mm-hmm.
But that fairly quickly goes by the wayside because the only people actively trying to kill animals are two guys who are plainly evil anyway.
and crazy.
Yeah, and don't really seem to have the support of anyone, so...
No.
We don't really need much of a message to say, don't agree with these guys. And Jake, who's just Captain Ahabing one particular animal, which I'm sure some particularly vehement animal rights people would be against, but he's not exactly upsetting the ecosystem.
No.
And he didn't come across to me as a bad guy in the movie.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And there was actually something else as well. There were tonal shifts in the film, even to the point of David Argue's crazy Dicko character. I don't recall moments where there was a genuine big bad that I hated across the board, that you would just, okay, this is the bad guy. Even Dicko was kind of that kind of sort of semi-quirky, fun...
No.
You didn't get that at all? Okay,
not
maybe that's
fun,
just me.
no.
Or maybe not fun as well.
No, bad. Verily mentally ill.
Verily mentally ill, yes. Which, of course, back then, from that type of era, it means, is interchangeable for evil anyway, because, yay!
Oh, yeah, no,
political
fair
correctness.
point, yeah.
But, no, I just say there wasn't anything that I really... It was meant to be a romp, I guess, and, I suppose it worked like that. Well, sorry, it worked for me. Obviously, at $5.5 million loss, it didn't necessarily work as a film. Do you reckon the budget got away from them, or do you think that was always earmarked?
Good question. It seems a lot of the money went on making the animatronic pigs.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they would have at least been aware of that, surely.
Yeah. And the thing is that I kind of get the feeling that in that time frame, if you're spending that much money on a particular technology or like a particular special effect, it's sort of almost like an advertisement that you actually are, this is what we can do, isn't this amazing?
Yeah.
But then the way they delivered that, very much in the Jaws style of barely seeing, it's barely any of that, none of it really comes across as an advert, as opposed to, say, Terminator 2, when, okay, here's our new technology for computer graphics that we can do, and then Jurassic Park, the same again.
Or to the point that people are calling morphing doing Terminator 2 stuff for a few years afterwards.
Yeah. Here's our demo reel, in essence. It just happens to have a fantastic soundtrack and a full-scale movie. But, yeah, I don't think there was very much from this that really pushed whatever it was. You'd need to be looking very closely.
New Zealand was backing it.
So people wouldn't come to Australia.
Okay, all right.
No, Dari was exactly right. This is actually made by the New Zealand Tourism Board.
Tourism Board, that
it's
makes
like,
sense.
we really wanted to come to Australia. Oh, dear God, no. Oh, look, we're right here.
Oh, look, yeah,
come
we're
and
like...
see hobbits. Okay, it's a bit early, but...
Yeah, we're like Australia, but with less deadly pigs.
And psychopaths. I could be wrong on that, but I'm just putting it out.
No, I think I like that. I like that.
I know, we'll probably have some special Kiwi-sploitation episode.
Actually, that'd be a really interesting one. Because I guess the idea... We probably want to... Actually, there's one other thing I just want to say is, just as a nod to the cinematography side of thing, the dolly zoom. The famous zoom that Spielberg put into the original Jaws, the moment that Brody sees the shark.
Zoom in, track out.
Zoom in, track out. They replicate that. The moment where he's looking through the binoculars and sees Razorback behind the thing, that's when it does that dolly zoom of zoom. So, yeah, that's obviously already nicely entrenched in the cinematographer's oeuvre by stage.
Without any expert knowledge, I think they might simply have just overestimated how well the film was going to do.
Yeah, I suppose.
I mean, cinema history is littered with things that people thought were going to completely clean up, and...
Also, 1980s, there was probably a lot of cocaine involved.
Look,
honestly, there
in
probably was. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Entertainment in Australia in the 80s, yes.
They probably missed the video nasty thing by that much, now I think about it.
Video nasty?
A lot of, especially horror movies, made their money on the home video circuit.
Aha.
Which was comparatively new, or at least comparatively new for a lot of people at the time. And one of the reasons for that was that at the time, a lot of big studios didn't want to put their big movies on home video.
Yes.
Because they thought then people would go and see them in the cinema.
Mm.
And one of the things this led to, the actual Video Nasties case, is that in the UK, the video market was basically unregulated. The Video Recordings Act would not happen until 1984, whereas most is kicked off in 1983.
Yep.
So you'd have people freely renting, and papers were all sort of, it's only children, 7-year-olds are seeing, blood sluts from Venus sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. Hey, great film that. Loved it.
But there was nothing stopping young or sensitive viewers just renting them from
No, exactly.
wherever. And this led to court cases and things, as there could have been this actually obscene material on the shelves all this time and we didn't notice, and that reduced a lot of this sort of film's presence on the video market as people were getting prosecuted or they were just getting cut too much to actually bother with. Side note, around the time, or rather a few years earlier, the people who made Alien initially were trying to persuade the British ratings people to give their film a lower rating so more people could see it. But then they realised, oh wait, we're trying to sell ourselves the scariest movie ever.
Yeah.
So they actually withdrew their request before it was even actually assessed.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's the Shivers whiskey
theory. That if you just crank it a little bit and...
Shivers was performing not very well at all, so they doubled the price and people thought it was exclusive, so started buying it. It tasted exactly the same.
Well, I guess,
more status.
And they've been doing that with cinema advertising for years. I mean, from the, don't come into this film if you have a heart condition, someone might die kind of stuff. If you can...
Yeah, in fact, I've been listening to a podcast about the actual Video Nasties, which is doing brief reviews of each actual logged Video Nasty, if you will.
Okay.
And things surrounding them. And they played the trailers, and a lot of them are the people basically saying how horrible an experience you'll have in this movie if you're, especially if you have a nervous disposition or young or pregnant or whatever.
Yeah, I can remember there was a movie, Stuff, I think, which was the idea of satanic fluff, which was, or like, evil fluff, the marshmallow spread.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And I can remember a movie which was all about how it would, infect you and then infect someone else. And I don't think I ever watched it, but I remember seeing the trailer in a lot of videos that we would see. And it was all about you'll never want to go to sleep again and, the stuff is coming for you and yeah, selling it as, this is going to be a terrible, terrible experience. Why would you want to do it? But so I'm guessing what was Razorback R-rated?
I know it's currently rated M. It might have been R to start with.
Okay.
It would almost certainly have been reassessed when it came to DVD and such. That wouldn't have been till this century, I imagine, and when standards were different. But I would say that maybe it just didn't quite...
Well, there's very little swearing.
Yeah, I noticed that. That was what I was wondering, because there's very little swearing.
Yeah. There's no sex. There's one booby shot.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's just grossness and gore, which doesn't seem to really attract ratings.
Though it did much more at the time.
Yeah.
They did much more at the time. In the whole Video Nasty thing. The whole Video Nasty thing was about essentially horror and violent films.
Yeah. Just when we were talking about the production of it, as I said, $5.5 million is a really big amount of money. Mad Max 2, which was in 1981, which was released 3 years before, was done for $2 million.
Whoa!
But Mad Max 3, which was only a year after, was $10 million. So there was actually a pretty hefty...
But didn't Mad Max 3 actually have some Hollywood money in it?
Yeah,
it did, yeah. And it had Tina Turner, it had a bunch of other stuff, and they were already pretty much knew they were onto a franchise. It grossed like $36 million US. So...
Yeah, whereas... This, I think they just anticipated a lot of things that didn't happen, or didn't quite catch on to the midnight movie or home video circuit.
If they were thinking if that thing about Gregory Harrison not having the pull that Jeff Bridges was going to have is true, then I guess they were at least considering the American market and really trying to push for it.
God, do you think we do anything without thinking about the American market?
Oh, God, no. No, yeah, so this is R-rated. R-rated horror thriller from 1984. So it definitely had the R rating, which is meant to be one of the kind of key points of an Ozploitation movie, is that after they made the R rating in Australia, that then sort of opened up the ability to make these really terrible, terrible movies.
Yeah, so I'm unaware of any single thing that caused it not to be successful. They may have
Did you just watch the same film that we did? No, I see what you're saying, though.
They might have thought, hey, remember that Mad Max film that did big in America and they made millions and millions of dollars? Let's aim
mix
high.
That with Jaws.
Yeah.
So let's see. So Mad Max 2 was released in 81, cost $2 million to make. That would have been early enough for a 1984 film for it to be an influence, wouldn't it? Someone, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So if the second Mad Max returned a ton, then maybe they would have thought, okay, we can, as you say, we can make an absolute fortune.
And maybe let's capitalise on this Dingo Ate My Baby.
Yeah, well, that's it too. I mean, if that's the influence at the time. Yeah, so Mad Max was made for $2 and grossed $12.5 in the States. So, yeah, I guess.
And that already had the first one behind it, which Razorback didn't.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they'd already seen, as I said, they already had seen 3 different Jaws movies drop and think, well,
Yeah,
there's
so
obviously
they were very
a market
confident
in there.
making this, weren't they?
I guess so. Yeah, they must have really thought they were onto a bit of a winner. And like I said, I mean, for me, I'm just really curious to know whether it was roughly within budget or did it blow out. That's actually a little aspect I'm really kind of curious about. So,
That may be on the documentary on the DVD, Jaws on Trotters.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds great. It's kind of a bit concerning that I'm involved in a podcast and I haven't seen the documentary on it. But I did want to come, like I said, I wanted to...
You didn't read the book on it either.
No, but I did want to... Well, at least I'm aware that the book exists now. But I wanted to come into this one because this was one I specifically remember watching myself as a kid, without, long before I ever even knew that Ozploitation was a thing. So I was curious to know what it was like, knowing very little about it again and seeing it now and, experiencing it the first time again. And like I said, something surprised me. It genuinely surprised me how good it looked. It genuinely surprised me how clean it was. I don't know how much cleaning up they've done for the digital release, but it was pretty nice and tight and crisp. There were only a few shots that were obviously, out of focus or poorly transferred. Mm-hmm. And the sound seemed okay too.
A lot of variation in volume.
Oh, was
the
it?
Transfer. You didn't notice?
I didn't notice that too much myself, but
No.
I guess even now, you lots of action movie, you watch a lot of dialogue, and then all of a sudden an action scene will happen, and your eardrums explode. Yeah.
How many giant killer boars out of 5 would you give it?
Oh, giant killer boars out of 5. I give it a solid 3. I reckon for what it was, I'd actually see.
I'd give it 3 and a tusk.
3 and a tusk.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think 3 and a tusk, 3 and a piglet.
The tusk is coming from the dehydration delusion sequences.
Yeah.
That was just fabulous.
You could really see the music video clip kind of history of this guy.
Yeah.
And he did stuff for Queen, stuff for Duran Duran. So yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks for listening to our coverage of Razorback, available from your various DVD and other services. Next time, we're hoping to bring you The Cars That Ate Paris.
Not Hilton.
So until then, I'm Daria.
I'm November.
And I'm Callum.
Thank you for listening to November, Callum and Daria on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast. More episodes are available at anchor.fm/podsploitation or via your podcatcher of choice. Find us on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube as Podsploitation and email us at podsploitation@gmail.com. If you'd like to help support the show, you can donate any currency in any amount at paypal.me/podsploitation. Theme music is Creation Time by Kilo Cuts, used with their kind permission under Creative Commons. Find and purchase their work at musicbrowser.de. Razorback is copyright Wonder Films. All other clips are for review and commentary purposes only, remain the copyright of their respective holders, and no claim or infringement is intended. No homicidal super pigs were harmed in the making of this podcast. Podsploitation is a Moment of Mayhem production.
Last year, more than 800,000 kangaroos and wobblies were... wobblies!